Well, greetings, everyone. My name is Brother Donnie. I hope you are doing well this evening, and I hope that you can hear me loud and clear. You'll see me down on the bottom part of your screen here. Welcome to How We Got Our Bibles. It is Monday night. Welcome on in. I'd like to say hello to Mary Catherine. Hello, Sylvia. Good to see you, Hodges. Hello, Warren. God bless you. Y'all come on in. Welcome in. We've got what I believe to be a superb study tonight. And I think that you're really going to enjoy this. Hello, Stringfield. Good to see you. We'll give everybody just a minute to come in. I hope that y'all have had a good weekend, and I hope you've been able to spend plenty of time with your family. I know a lot of folks are getting garden ready and getting seeds ready soon, and certainly we're going to do that if this rain ever stops. So y'all come on in the house. Hello, Jim and Lynn. I hope you're doing well. Now, let's go ahead and get started tonight. We have a particularly what I'm excited about, and that is the Geneva Bible. And we are kind of talking about the early English Bibles. And these Bibles were the predecessors to the King James Bible. Now, if you'll look down in the little picture here, this is one of the two copies of the Geneva Bible that I have. And actually, Jennifer, her primary Bible she uses is a Geneva Bible. So I'm excited tonight to talk about the Geneva Bible. And the reason is because it was the Geneva Bible that most of the Protestants, the Pilgrims, brought over with them when they came. And I'll show you that more in a minute. So the Geneva Bible, very interesting here. So let's get ready and we'll just go through here. So the Geneva Bible was first published in 1560 as a whole. And I'm going to do an overview, but then I'm going to go through and break it down and give you a little more detail. One of the most highly historically significant translation of the Bible into English, preceding the King James Version by 51 years. It was the primary Bible of the 16th century English Protestantism and was used by William Shakespeare, Oliver Cromwell, John Knox, John Donne, and others. It was one of the Bibles taken to America on the Mayflower. Isn't that something? Pilgrim Hall Museum has collected several Bibles of Mayflower passengers, and the Geneva Bible was used by many English dissenters. Now, the English dissenters was those who dissented against the Church of England, the Anglican Church at the time. This version of the Bible is significant because for the first time, a mechanically printed, mass-produced Bible was made available directly to the general public, which comes with a variety of scriptural study guides and aids. And this is very interesting because, you talk to some people today, and some people today, they hold to the King James because they say the King James is the first and it's the best of the English Bibles. It was not the first, and it is not the best of the English Bibles. And I'm not saying that Geneva is the best either, by the way, but it certainly predates the King James by about 51 years. And as a matter of fact, 80% of the King James take from Tyndale, and a good bit of the Geneva, a portion of that is taken from some of Tyndale stuff, and we'll see that here in just a minute. Now, this Bible here it's awesome. Now, we have met this lady here on the top picture. She is a cantankerous animal. She is a beast. She is a monster, and her name is Bloody Mary, Mary, Queen of England. And I call her all those affectionate titles because she had a huge persecution launched against those brothers and sisters that were reforms, that were part of the Reformation. And she killed hundreds and hundreds of brothers and sisters in the name of God and doing right. And it was awful. Now, the ebb and flow of freedom continued throughout the 1540s. You know, that's the time period we're in with our Bibles. And after King Henry, King Edward took the throne, and after his death, the reign of Queen Bloody Mary was the next obstacle to the printing of the Bible in English. She was possessed in her quest to return England to the Roman Church. Listen to this. In 1555, John Rogers of the Matthew Bible fame, remember, and Thomas Cranmer were both burned at the stake. Mary went on to burn reformers at the stake by the hundreds for the crime of being a Protestant. This era was known as the Marian exile, and the refugees fled from England, and most of them went into Geneva. Now, in the 1550s, the Church of Geneva was very sympathetic to the reformers and was one of the only safe havens for desperate people. Many of them met in Geneva, led by, you'll recognize some of these names, Miles Coverdale, John Fox, who, by the way, published Fox's Book of Martyrs, which is exhaustive reference work to the persecution and martyrdom of early Christians and Protestants. Great book. Some of you have that book, as well as Thomas Sampson and William Whittingham. And they came from England to Geneva under the protection of John Calvin. Now, Calvin had published the most famous Christian book at the time called The Institutes of Christian Religion. You heard Chicken Johnny talking about that not long ago. And John Knox, the great reformer of the Scottish Church, the Church of Geneva, together determined to produce a Bible that would educate their families while they continued in exile. Now, I don't have this in the notes. I should add this, but let's keep this in mind here. So under Mary, and then even later under King James, they were highly sensitive to the way the reformers in the notes dealt with the kings. And under Geneva and in Geneva, the study notes that came with the first translation, the first edition of the Geneva Bible, was very difficult on tyrannical rule from the king. Now, you may remember from several weeks ago, and I hope it's not dry history, but several weeks ago, we talked about how Geneva was a little bit different because it didn't exactly fall up under a king. It had more like a city council and a representative form of government, which was catch me here now, Calvin's form of government that they attempted to put in place in Geneva was a precursor to what we would call our constitutional republicanism now. So keep all that in mind. So in Geneva, they wanted to print a Bible that they would be able to help and to help their families. By the way, the bottom picture is John Fox. The first full edition of this Bible, with further revised New Testament, appeared in 1560 and was published by Sir Rowland Hill. But it was not printed in England, the New Testament, until 1575 and 1576, the complete Bible in England. Over 150 editions were issued. The last edition that was printed was in 1644. Although, and I'll say this a couple of times, by then King James had outlawed the Geneva Bible. So in order for them to be able to, for people to have the new edition, they had to predate the Bible to 1599. Okay. King James said anything after 1599 couldn't be printed, or you couldn't get. So even when they made them in 1654, often they would backdate it to 1599. The first Bible printed in Scotland was the Geneva Bible, which was first issued in 1579. In fact, the involvement of John Knox and Calvin in the creation of the Geneva Bible made it especially appealing to Scotland, where a law was passed in 1579 requiring every household of sufficient means to buy a copy. Wow. How you think it would be in America today if we required every household to at least have a copy of God's word in it? The annotations, which are an important part of the Geneva Bible, and this is what I was talking about a while ago, the notes, were Calvinist and Puritan in character. And as such, they were disliked by the ruling pro-government, the Anglicans of the Church of England, as well as King James the First, who commissioned the authorized version or King James Bible. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. In my ignorance, when I first got saved, I thought the King James was authorized by God. That's why I thought it said authorized. Didn't nobody tell me otherwise. Isn't that awful? I thought that the King James, because it said the authorized version, was authorized by God. And when in fact it was just authorized by the king. The Geneva Bible had also motivated the earlier production of the Bishop Bible under Elizabeth I. And we'll talk about that later. For the same reason, and the later Reims Dua edition by the Catholic community. The Geneva Bible remained popular among Puritans and remained in widespread use until after the English Civil War. And the Geneva Notes were surprisingly included in a few editions of the King James Version, even as late as 1715. Now, so the textual, what did they use to make this Geneva Bible? The Geneva Bible was translated from scholarly editions of the Greek New Testament and the Hebrew scriptures that comprise the Old Testament. The English rendering, we've heard these names before, was substantially based on the earlier translations by, here we go again, William Tyndale, Miles Cloverdale, and the Geneva Bible relies significantly upon Tyndale. However, the Geneva Bible was the first English version in which all the Old Testament was translated directly from the Hebrew. Now, it's interesting, the Geneva Bible also was the first English Bible in its completeness to use numbers, to use verse numbers and chapters. Prior to that, it was just a long open forum when you read the scriptures. Now, this is important here, just for our understanding. It's not important for Bible study, but at this time, they used two different types of text styles, if you will. They used a Gothic style and they used a Roman style. The example on the left is a Gothic style text, and some of the Bibles were translated into the Gothic style, the one on the left, and then some of the Bibles were translated into the more familiar Roman style, which is the one on the right. And I'll tell you all this because it's important for the whole the atmosphere. The Geneva Bible, listen, this is interesting. The Geneva Bible became the Bible of choice for over 100 years of English-speaking Christians. Between 1560 and 1644, at least 144 editions of the Bible, hello, Shepherds Forever, at least 144 editions of the Bible were published. Examination of the 1611 King James Bible shows that its translators were influenced much more by the Geneva Bible than any other source. The Geneva Bible itself retains over 90% of William Tyndale's original English translation. And the Geneva, in fact, remained more popular than the King James until decades after its original release in 1611. And the Geneva holds the honor of being the first Bible taken to America and the Bible of the Puritans and the Pilgrims. Now, King James's distaste for the Geneva Bible wasn't apparently not necessarily caused just by the translation of the text into English, but mostly the notes in the margins. You know, I told you when they published this Geneva Bible, the publishers were theologians, or the translators, the ones that put it together were theologians. So they would put their notes into the margins to help the people as they do their Bible study, much like we have Bibles today that have a study Bible. The Geneva, I've heard it put this way, was the first English-speaking study Bible. It was the first English-speaking study Bible. King James didn't like the way it dealt with certain parts of the scripture. And in all likelihood, he saw the Geneva's interpretation of some biblical passage as anti-clerical republicanism. Instead of having a monarch's mindset or a kingship, republicship, if you will, which could imply church hierarchy was unnecessary. Now, I want to show you something here, what I'm talking about. There were passages in the notes that appeared the term tyrant. So Daniel 6, verse 22, Daniel 6, verse 22, this is New American Standard, by the way. It says, "My God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, and they have not harmed me since I was found innocent before him, and toward you, O king, I have committed no crime." Now, that's the verse. Now I'm going to read you what the notes in the annotations of the Geneva Bible says about that verse. This would be the footnote, if you will. "For he, Daniel, disobeyed the king's wicked commandment in order to obey God. And so he did no injury to the king, who ought to command nothing by which God would be dishonored." Now, I thought that was very interesting, because you get an idea to see that King James wasn't simply, and the other guys, they weren't simply just wanting to have the best translation. When the rubber hits the road, they were trying to secure their hierarchy. That's what I want you to see. They were securing their hierarchy. Now, two Puritans suggested that a new translation of the Bible be produced to better unify the Anglican Church in England and Scotland. James, that is King James, embraced the idea. He would not only be rid of those inconvenient annotations or notes, but he would have a greater influence on the translation of the Bible as a whole. He commissioned a charter, a new translation of the Bible, which would eventually become the most famous version of the Bible in the history of the English language, officially known as the Authorized Version to be read in churches. The new Bible would come to bear his name as the so-called King James Bible, or King James Version. The first and early editions of the King James Bible from 1611 and the first few decades thereafter lack annotations, unlike nearly all editions of the Geneva Bible up to that time. Puritans bringing the Geneva Bible to the New World. Initially, the King James Version did not sell well and competed with the Geneva Bible. Shortly after the first edition of the King James Version, King James banned the printing of the new edition of the Geneva Bible to further entrench his version. That's why I told you. Well, let me read this. However, Richard Barker continued to print Geneva Bibles even after the ban, placing the date of 1599 on the new copies of the Geneva Bible, which were printed between about 1616 and 1625. So the legacy of the Geneva Bible is a huge legacy. The Anglican Church's King James Bible took decades to overcome the more popular Protestant church's Geneva Bible. And it's interesting today, folks, that in our country today, a lot more people would go towards the King James and say it certainly must be the closer Bible to the truth than any other Bible, when in fact, for 100 years, the Geneva Bible is what people use. One of the greatest ironies of history is that many Protestant Christian churches today embrace the King James Bible exclusively as the only legitimate English language translation. Yet it is not even a Protestant translation. This is the thing here. And people says, well, what is it? What does that mean? Well, what that means is when the King James was translated, it was translated as a Church of England Bible, not necessarily a Protestant Bible. And it's interesting that it was printed to complete with the Protestant Geneva Bible by authorities who throughout most of history were hostile to Protestants and killed them. While many Protestants are quick to assign the full blame of persecution to the Roman Catholic Church, listen now, it should be noted that even after England broke from Roman Catholicism in the 1500s, the Church of England, or the Anglican Church, continued to persecute Protestants. One famous example of this is John Bunyan. Now, y'all folks know John Bunyan wrote the great book, The Pilgrim's Progress. And he wrote that book, by the way, while he was in prison. Now, throughout the 1600s, as the Puritans and Pilgrims fled the religious persecution of England to cross the Atlantic and start a new free nation in America, they took with them their precious Geneva Bible and rejected the King James Bible. America was founded upon the Geneva Bible and not the King James Bible. And I would propose to you that those who hold to an exclusivity of the King James and shun every other translation do so at their own peril, as a peril of ignorance. The King James is a solid translation. The Geneva Bible is a solid translation. But if I'm going to recommend a translation to you, I'm going to recommend the New American Standard all day long. All day long. It is the closest translation to the original language that is available today. That's not the Geneva nor the King James Bible. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Now, you can still get a $15.99 copy of the Geneva Bible. Not very expensive. I think this one, somebody gifted me this one, but this Bible probably cost $20. It's not very expensive, but it is chock full. This is actually a revolutionary, it's called the Patriots Edition, and it's pretty interesting. It's got George Washington's printed prayer in it, and it's got several things that are pretty interesting. All right, folks. Well, I hope this has been a blessing to you. If I can do anything for you, please let me know. Next week, we'll start the discussion about the King James Bible more in-depthly. And again, I'm not here to debate legitimacy or certainly not here to argue with anybody. I'm just here to show you the facts of where our Bibles came from. And as long as you're reading the Bible, that's what's important to me. Look forward to seeing everybody next time. God bless you. Have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.